Okay guys, in this session we are going to create the eyes of our character. If you didn't watch the previous sessions that we created the blockout for the head and the body, I will put the video card in the top right corner of this video and in the description below. Make sure to check them in order to catch up to us. The reference pictures that we will use in this course are from the book Anatomy for Sculptures, and we even use the human proportion calculator from the anatomyforsculptures.com. I will give you the link in the description below. Those guys were kind enough to let me show you the pictures from the book, and you can see the logo on the corner. This video is generally sped up 3 times so that it will not be boring for you. You can use the YouTube player speed feature to slow down the video where you feel it's necessary. Without further ado, let's start the session. The eyes are placed in the middle of the head vertically. If you look at the total head height and divide it into 2, you will find where the eyes or top of the eyes should be. Here we divided the head into 6 segments horizontally and vertically. So like before, we create a cube and divide it into 6 divisions in each axis in initialize section of the tools menu. Then scale the cube to match the head size, then height half of the cube. Doesn't matter which half, as we just want to locate the eyes position, and it's in the middle of the cube. Don't delete the other half, we maybe need it later. Middle line of the cube is the position of the eyes. In the reference picture, you can see that it's the middle of the eyes, but more times it's the top of the eyes. Horizontally, if we split the head into 5 columns, the eyes are placed in columns 2 and 4, and column 3 is the space between 2 eyes. A space between eyes is different in different people. Sometimes it's more than 1 column, or in another word, 1 eye. Sometimes it's less than that. But in general and for anatomy, we assume that it's 1 eye width. We duplicate our cube, delete every row except 1, then delete one of the columns so that it's now 5 columns in total. And then scale it to match the head size horizontally. Then we delete every segment except segments 2 and 4, or columns 2 and 4, which are the placement and the size of the eyes. Then I enable the transparency mode, and in front view with perspective off, I will mark the location and the size of the eyes on our head. Make sure to turn on the ghost mode just below transparency mode. This way you can sculpt through the ghosted object. In this case, the cube that shows the size and the location. Now we have a shape to start creating the eyes. We carve a small indentation on the outer side of the eye. This indentation breaks the box shape of the eyes and makes the transition from the eyes to the head fluent. Then we make an indentation below the eyes to mark the cheekbone, and we carve in the inner corner of the eyes near the nose. Here I figured out the front part of the head is too narrow, so I made it a little bit larger to be more realistic. And then I make a small indentation for the nose bridge. I've added a little volume to the cheekbones to be more prominent. We can reduce the volume later if needed. For now, I want it to be prominent. So we see the eyes and the area clear, and it's generally easy on our eyes. The eyeballs themselves are about 1/6 of the head width from the front view. Eyeballs are a little bit smaller than the eyes we see in the face because of the different things that contain the eyes in place. So follow me carefully on this. Duplicate our main cube again and delete everything except 1 row. This row already has 6 segments. Now scale it to the head size, but keep in mind that it should be a little bit larger than a head width. If you scale it exactly at the head size, our eyes will be a little bit small. So make the row just a little bit larger than the head width. After you scale it, delete every segment except 1. It's the size of our eyeball, and we keep this segment. Then add a sphere, and in the front view with the perspective off and transparency on, resize the sphere so that it fits into the segment we've created just now. Make sure anytime you try to measure something in 3D applications, turn off the perspective or go into the orthographic view. Perspective changes the way you see your object depending on the distance the object has from the camera and the vertical and the horizontal offset of the object from the middle of the screen. So in another word, the offset in any of x, y, or z axes will change the way you see the object, so it's not accurate for measuring. Here I've turned the eye 90 degrees, so the point where the polygons merge together is in front and facing us. This way masking and painting the eyes will be much easier. Okay, now create the iris. As you can see in the reference, the size of the iris is half or 50% of the eye. So now that we made an eye with the correct size, it will be easy to make the iris. 50% of the eye with the perfect circular mask. Here I selected the normal circular mask, but make sure you will select the perfect one. This way your mask will be a perfect circle. To select it, just hold the Ctrl and click on the brushes on the top left corner, then select the circular mask and drag to create your shape. And while dragging, you can hold the space to move the mask. Then reverse the mask by holding the Ctrl and clicking outside of the model on the canvas or on the viewport. Then I smooth the iris area to make it flat. Then I duplicate the eye subtool and undo the iris flattening on the main eye subtool because I forgot to duplicate the eye and then flatten the iris. But for you, just duplicate the eye and then flatten the iris of one of the eyes. I mean one of the subtools, not one eye. I've duplicated the complete eye to make the cornea or the shiny part of the eye that covers the iris. And to make the cornea, we just need to scale the sphere down and place it like the reference so that the cornea protrudes the main eye exactly from the edges of the iris. To be honest, it's easier to look at the reference on how it protrudes the eye than explaining it. In the side view for measuring the placement of the eye horizontally, as you can see in the reference picture, if you create a line shape like a line and place it like a ruler so that it connects the eyebrow area to the cheekbone, this shape should cross exactly from the middle of your iris or your pupil. Finally, we mirror the eyeballs. But remember, in the top view, you need to turn the eyes a little bit to the outside so that they have a small offset from the center. Our eyes are not parallel and straight. Now for the eyelids, append the sphere. Go to the initial eyes and set the resolution on all axes to 10, then click on the cube sphere. This way we can cut the cube easily and then we can model it. Then cut it in half to create two shapes for the upper and the lower eyelids. Then select the Z modeler brush and extrude the inner faces and give each eyelid some depth. Eyelids are not thin, so make them thick. Then place them and scale them. You could have just scaled them before cutting them, but you need to rotate them for placement after cutting. As I said, rotate the upper eyelid just a little bit, and the opposite for the lower eyelid. Eyelids are not as straight. Here, pay attention to the reference picture on how the upper and the lower eyelids cover up the iris. The upper eyelid will always cover a portion of the iris. The amount varies in different people. But if you don't follow this rule, your character will look surprised. Now carve the inner corner somehow deep. You can use the eyelid shape as a reference on how deep you should carve in. But keep in mind, the inner corner does not wrap around the eye perfectly. Now, from the bottom view, shape the upper eyelid so it takes the form of the eye. Remember that the eyeballs have a bump that is created by the cornea. So the eyelids will take that shape too. And make sure to keep the eyelids thickness the same in all areas. They don't get thinner in the corners. And for the lower eyelids, make sure to adjust it the same way, but in the top view. As I said before, here I'm going to turn the eye from the top view to give a little angle towards the outside. You can see what I'm talking about in the reference picture. Now I want to create the shape of the eyelids. Right now our eyelids are 2/2 of a sphere. But as you can see in the reference, they are not that primitive and they connect to each other in the corners, and even their shape is not in a straight line from one corner to another. At the outer corner of the eye, the lower eyelid should go under the upper eyelid. Make sure to implement this shape right now when our eyelids are two different subtools and we can manipulate them easily. This way you can bypass a common difficulty that beginners do have, and they can make the correct shape in the outer corner of the eyes. Here I have increased the thickness of the eyelids by extruding the inner faces again because I felt that they were too thin. Now I try to create the inner corner of the eyes that contains the lacrimal and crancle of the eyes by appending and shaping spheres. Now I try to make the shapes in the eye region. You can see what I'm aiming for in the reference. Those blue, green and pink shapes are what I'm going to make. For making them, I will append the spheres and shape them like the shape they have in the reference. Appending the shapes is an easy method to achieve the main and big forms before sculpting. Later, when you are comfortable enough with anatomy, you can sculpt everything from scratch, but for now, I feel it's a good learning method. A lot of 3D artists, including myself, were struggling with anatomy sculpting when we were starting. But I learned the blocking out method from Shane Nelson, shout out to him, and blocking out shapes and parts made my learning course like heaven. So I thought maybe it will help you too. This method will actually reduce your mistakes because sculpting something in 3D is hard to begin with. You sculpt it perfectly in one view and when you rotate it, it's a mess in another angle. But blocking out makes things much easier. But in the end, it's your preference. And when you are shaping the sphere, if you feel your polygons are stretched, just dynamesh them with a low resolution, of course. And the tip, you can hide and shape the object by moving it inside another object and hiding the parts you don't want. This makes shaping much easier as your object might not be the shape you want in solo mode, but when you see it in the conjunction with the other objects, like the head, it's exactly the way you want it. Who cares if the inside of the head is a mess? They are parts that will stay hidden. None of them will be included in the end result. We will use this method a lot to make and shape things, props, clothes, so make sure to use this method. Now I add the first shape for the eyebrow area. This shape will be on top of the other eyebrow shape, and it creates the bulge that we see in the eyebrows. Here my nose bridge is too thick, so the shape you see is different from what you see in the reference picture. We will fix the nose in the nose session. Now I added the other shape for the eyebrow. Some parts of this shape are under the other one, but the other part of it will be on top of the top eyelid and covers it. This is the shape that hangs on the top of the top eyelid if you look at people's face. And amount of hanging vary on different people and depends on age, gender, ethnicity. For example, the Asian people don't have this shape hanging on top of the upper eyelid. and elderly people have this shape hanging more because it's lost its firmness. In this reference picture, you can see again all the landmarks and separations that I'm aiming for with this shape creation. Now I've merged all the parts of the eye and mirrored it on the other side. I could have dynameshed them together before mirroring, but whatever, this way I can still shape them and correct them with these. Okay, for the eye corners, as you can see in the reference image, there are different angles between the inner and the outer corners, and it varies on different people. Personally, I prefer the outer corner to be a little bit higher than the lower corner. It's more appealing to me in the 3D characters, otherwise in the real people, all of these variations are beautiful. So I've added our cube, which is not a cube anymore, to measure the amount of the difference between two corners. It's just like a line to measure how different they are comparing to each other. You don't have to use these. You can use a line, ruler, or even something straight like your pen in the real life and put it in front of the monitor and just measure how much they differ. The goal here is just to see the measurements and how much you're moving the corners higher or lower. Most of the times, if you don't measure precisely like this, you will go too far and the eyes look unnatural. Here I made the final adjustments for the eyes, specifically adjusting and referring to the lower and the upper eyelids and making the shape more natural. Now I've dynameshed the eye parts together first, because sometimes when you dynamesh all the parts with a big shape like head together, it will mess up your shapes. I don't know the reason, but I found out that if you dynamesh the small parts first and then dynamesh them as a whole to the big shape, most of the time you will be okay. I dynamesh them at different resolution to find out a good dynamesh resolution that while it's low poly enough, my mesh doesn't lose details. It's especially important in different face parts like eyes, nose, mouth, because we need the definition to be precise and we don't want to lose all the eyelid shapes or mouth shapes, nose shapes that we created. Losing some detail is okay, we can carve that back, but losing the main shapes is not okay. Then I merge it with the head and dynamesh it again with different resolution to find a suitable one to work with. Finally, I found a good resolution to dynamesh and I will stick to that. Then I smooth the eye shapes to blend it with the head. But pay attention to not smooth too much the areas near the edges or where you want the details. For example, don't smooth the eyelids as you will lose the shape and definition. Or you can just decrease the smooth pricing intensity and touch it with a low pen pressure to smooth just the jagged parts, not the edges. Now I will sculpt back the details that I've lost and shape the eyelids again. Because we want it or not, we're gonna lose some definition in dynamesh if we are aiming for a lower resolution. When you merge everything together and look at your shape as a whole, you will see more things to fix. This may be good, but be cautious that this may lead you to make mistakes and misjudge, especially for the shapes. So adjust the shapes with caution. In the side view, I saw that the eye corners are too much back. They should be more to the front, so I adjusted them and brought them a little bit to the front. Obviously, everything is depending on the people. We have a lot of shapes and variations, but we are aiming here the preference of mind. Again, I will check the thickness of the eyelids and their shape due to the dynamesh deformation and make sure that the eyelids hug the eyes. Another tip that I can tell you is that when you move a shape from one angle, the chances are high that it will be deformed and out of shape from another angle. So you need to check them at every angle with each stroke or move. Here I've changed eyelids from the below, but in the front view their shape was messed up, so I need to fix that in the front view too. And with all that said, if you still have problems with angles, for example, you move something and fix it in another angle, then you return to your previous angle and it's messed up again, and technically you're in a loop. I can just advise you to change the angle you move things around. Just change the view. If you move it from one angle and it's always a mess, just try new angles. Changing the angle will break the loop and eventually you will find the good angles for fixing shapes. And yes, some angles are better for fixing each part and you will find them by time and practice. Once again, I'm telling you this to make sure you will remember it. Go to the orthographic view when you try to measure things, like height, anatomy, or even two objects with each other, and stuff like this. But for sculpting, and especially organic characters like humans, go to the perspective. The reason is, one, our eyes in real life see things in perspective, so our natural sense will help us if we sculpt in perspective. Two, for the same reason, in the reason one, we can mess things up and things look unnatural in the orthographic view. And reason three, in the render engines and game engines, everything renders in the perspective. So you want your model to be the same when it's rendered or when it's in the game engine. Here I'm making the final adjustments like eyebrows region, nose bridge, and final lines and details for the eye region. Here, for masking the top part, I use the transpose masking technique. To do this, select the transpose tool by pressing W on your keyboard, then hold Ctrl and drag the mouse to the area you want to be masked. As you can see, it will mask my model depending on the regions or the geometry of my model, and this is so useful when you are trying to mask things that are close together but are geometrically different, like the example here, or like masking the top and the bottom lips, especially in the closed mouth. I've made this shape to overhang a little bit on the top eyelid, but I don't know how much I want it to be overhang, because in females the overhang is not that prominent. Especially in the semi-realistic models, we try to make the characters as smooth as possible. So here I make it hang a little bit, and later I can adjust by simply smooth it or move it around. And here you see that I've increased the volume of the cheekbone and it's clearly too much. But I did that to mark the major landmarks of the face. If all the shapes are subtle, even I had a hard time finding the mistakes and the placements of things. I made the major landmarks like this so it will be easier on my eyes to find the flaws and things being out of place. And in the end, when our face is complete, we can smooth things and make features subtle and appealing. Especially for female characters, these details should be subtle. Okay, that's for the eye anatomy video. If you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe to the channel. And if you are waiting for the next sessions of this course, make sure to turn on the notification bell icon so you will get notified as soon as the new videos come. And don't hesitate to ask any questions in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.